welcome to the Copy Blogger podcast. Ethan and I are sitting here with matching hoodies. Ethan is right back from his road trip. He has got one of the thicker beards I've ever seen him. Looks like he's got a little bit of a tan. It looks like you've been on the road for like a week and a half, man. Welcome back to reality.
It's good to be back. It's good to be back. Oh, where is your hoodie from?
Converse. I got the logo right here.
Right.
That's why I thought you were saying it, because I only wear Chuck Taylors. Like I don't wear any other shoes. I think arches and shoes are like pretty dumb and ridiculous, and plus Cons are just the coolest shoes that there are. And so most of my clothes are Converse.
Right on. I got this. This is have you ever heard of Fresh Clean Threads? It's a brand.
I've heard of them. Yeah.
So their founder is a friend, and we met up for dinner in San Diego, and she hooked me up with like basically a whole second wardrobe.
Cool.
The ride back, which was great. And it's like, dude, it's super comfortable. Like I said, full disclosure, she's a friend, but I'm like, after we hop off here, about to go replace all my socks with their socks because it's just
Fresh Clean Threads. All right. You drove all
it's
the way to
comfy.
San Diego?
Oh my God, dude. I drove so from here I'm in Austin now, drove from here to Tahoe, and then north, like over the mountains to San Francisco, then down the coast to San Diego, then all the way back.
What?
Yeah. It was a wild ride, man. It was a lot of fun. Although I had the van was fantastic, but I parked it for a couple of days, which a lot of people here might know because I recorded the last episode from a hotel room. When I went to pick it back up, I think I was just misreading the panel or something. And so I thought there had been like a critical power failure in the van. So my phone died, my laptop died. Like I couldn't charge anything. I had to guess how to get from Tahoe to San Francisco. And so literally it was like 2:30 in the afternoon. And I'm like, okay, well, the sun is going to be west. So I just pointed the car towards the sun, and as luck would have it, was on, I think it was Route 50 or something like that, which goes straight to the city.
That is so fun.
Yeah, it ended up being one switch that I had to flip to get the power back on. But I spent like basically 2 days with no power in the van. So
That's cool.
it was an adventure all around. Yeah.
Yeah, that's cool.
Yeah, it was awesome. I definitely recommend it. It was a lot of fun.
Well, welcome back, man. San Diego is one of my all-time favorite places. That city is just great.
Yeah, you spent some time there?
Yeah, I spent not a whole lot of time. I think I was there for 3 or 4 days, but it just had a great vibe. And then I don't know the city that well, so I'm probably gonna butcher this, but there's San Diego, and then there's a really long bridge to get to some kind of like island, which is still technically San Diego, I think, but it's like right out into the ocean. And it seemed like that was kind of like more of a touristy, little bougie type place. And so we posted up on like this country club and just had like a great lunch, and watched all the, I don't think they're seals, sea lions maybe, and they're like or and there's like those t-shirts with them sticking their noses up in the air. I loved it.
That's awesome.
Yeah, well, I'm glad you're back.
I've been there a couple of times, and this was the first time that I felt like the city really clicked. In fact, funny enough, you might know this, Steph Smith is a friend of mine. Her and her husband live out in San Diego. Yeah, well, they're about to move to San Francisco, but they've been out in San Diego for years, and I've been trying to convince them to come to Austin, and they never did. They're just going to San Francisco instead. And in the back of my head, I was like, I just don't get it, right? Like the cost of living is so much lower. The tech scene is so much better in Austin, certainly, than it is in San Diego. And then on this trip, I hit like Encinitas at like 7:00 in the morning and just drove the Pacific Coast Highway all the way down.
Cool.
And it's like, I get it.
Yeah.
I get it now. I totally get it. The vibe was just like, it was so relaxing. And I was like, man, if I was here, I don't think there's much that would pull me away from this either.
No question. Yeah. I loved it there.
It's good to see you though, man. It's good to be back.
Glad you're back.
Excited to chat today. Do you have any shout outs? I have one small shout out, but we got to keep it short because we basically talked about these guys all week last week. But it was kind of cool that
for sure. Josh, I think his name was, from Volley. I guess somehow word got around of our podcast, and he reached out to me on LinkedIn, and he said basically just really thanked us, said he loved the episode. You and I were joking a little bit before because I think we were so like complimentary, I think that's the word, that we're worried that people might think that like they were sponsoring us, and like they were not sponsoring us. I never talked to them before. But he reached out to us on LinkedIn, and he said he shared the podcast with his whole crew, and I think they're even making a couple snippets for their own social media. So that was cool, man. Thank you, Josh. Let me make sure that's his name. That'll be super embarrassing if I don't get his name right.
Yeah, it
Almost
was very
positive I
cool.
got it right though.
They cut the thing up, and
Yeah, Josh Little. Josh Little.
I think that's the first time I've seen anybody else cut up one of our clips. Have you seen that before?
No, never. That was the first. That made me feel like a little famous.
Yeah, yeah, that was cool. So thanks, shout out to the volley team. One more thing, and I swear to God, I just said I'm like, we can't talk about these guys again. But I was listening back to the last episode, and it occurred to me that in our excitement to talk about the coaching part of it, like how you could use it as a coach, we totally overlooked like a really cool use case for that software, which I don't know if this is what Volley is after, but like imagine this. So for people who didn't hear it, Volley is this software that allows you to like buy pre-timed coaching packages with coaches, and then every video you record counts against the time that you paid for. So you can kind of volley messages back and forth. And as a coach, it's great because like you're not wasting your time attending to somebody who's not really paying you for your time.
Yeah, and it's async, so everyone can do it on their own schedule.
How cool would it be to have like a pocket full of coaches for different things though? So like imagine it. I mean, we talked about it from the coaching perspective, which is cool. But if you're like building an agency, it would be so cool to be able to have like 10 people that you just pay for 10 minutes with, and then you just dip into those inboxes
you're
whenever
right.
you have
Like a
specific
copywriting
questions.
coach, like an SEO coach, like
Yeah.
yeah.
I mean, I think about that as a newsletter guy because like a lot of my team at the original hustle is now they're off doing their own things. So like Matt McGarry, who's been on this show, he's all about growth. And then there's Katie Huff, who's all about selling ads. And then like Sam or all these other people who are about copywriting or whatever. And I was just thinking to myself, I mean, like they're friends.
And then there's Trung, who's all about doing whatever he wants to do.
I'm not sure what
Okay.
Trung is doing right now. For us, we're kind of lucky because these people are like friends or colleagues or whatever, and you can reach out to them, but I don't always want to bug them, or like I would want to make sure they were getting paid for any advice that they were giving. And under some circumstances, I just thought it would be so cool to have like a pocket full of consultants, basically, that you can just every time you run into something, you're just like, hey, this is what we're running into now. What do you think? And you can send that to one of them, two of them, whatever. I think it's cool, man. I think there's something there.
Me too. Well, it was a great episode. Thanks, Josh. All right, on to today's episode. I think we're talking about me, which is my favorite subject, right?
Yeah, we'll start with your hoodie and then your thoughts on San Diego, and we can pivot into your yeah, man, I wanted to talk about this tweet that you did. So you put together a thread recently where you said, by the way, great hook on this. And I think I see you experimenting with something here. So I want to get your thoughts on it if I'm calling this right. But here's the first tweet. It says, my companies have made over $10 million in the last 5 years. Here are 17 unconventional business tips that'll help you earn more. Number 1, don't drink alcohol. And that is the full first tweet.
Yeah.
So 2 things. First, we're going to go through some of the things in this tweet. We don't have time to cover all of them, but some of these were like more out there than others, and some of them were more popular than others. So I just wanted to kind of like dig in on a couple of them and hear some more of your thoughts. But also that last little thing there, were you trying to be inflammatory or what?
I put the little 1 in there, even though like number 1 was part of the next tweet underneath it. Yeah, I did that.
Were you just trying to rile people up or what?
Yeah, like, well, I was thinking when I got sober, it was still kind of stigmatized to be that way, but not drinking I've just noticed is becoming kind of popular, even for people that aren't necessarily in recovery. Just I've just noticed it. You know, there's all types of these mocktail companies coming out. There's like sober bars. I think millennials in general and Zoomers to an extent, but I think especially millennials are just a lot more cognizant of control. And so I think not drinking is something that is becoming just a little bit more like popular, but it's also not popular. Just it's not a big deal anymore. You know, like it was a big deal 13 years ago when I was kind of coming around. It's just not a big deal anymore. And so I thought, you know what? Let's pop that one in there because I think a lot of people before I would do it thinking, oh my God, he doesn't drink. Like, what does he do at this time? But now I was thinking, let's do it because there's going to be a lot more people than I would expect that would say, oh yeah, me neither, you know, and so open them up that way.
That's
So I was trying to get it on both sides.
That's interesting. That reminds me of something that Sam told me once early on when I just recently joined the hustle, where he said like, well, he said a couple of things about content that spreads, and there are a few ways that he thinks about it. One is that he thinks about content through the lens of emotion. Like, what are the emotions that spread? Because
Yeah.
it's not just topics, right? And this is why a certain like some people can write about a topic and it gets no traction, and then other people can write about the exact same thing and get tons of traction. It's because it's really the emotion that
Yeah.
makes an idea move. And there are a few emotions, like anger is an obvious one. Also, like excitement or identification with something, like where you say something that somebody else has believed but maybe hasn't said publicly, right? So it's like, oh, that is me. Finally, somebody else is saying it. Sadness does not really do it.
No.
So those are a few things. But the other thing that he told me is he said, your haters will spread you just as far as the people who love you, sometimes further. So I was wondering, did you get any blowback on the don't drink alcohol one, or was it
No.
all just people who were on board?
No. Anytime I get that, I always get DMs from people almost reaching out for help.
Wow.
I get that a lot, especially with the email list from Sober Nation and the autoresponders that go out. Yeah, I hardly ever get haters. It's always people that it's two things. One, it's people that congratulate me, which I think it's a lot weirder than people expect it to be because there was no part ever in the whole experience where I said to myself, like, I want to do something good in my life. It was completely opposite. It was like I am so fucked and like I'm gonna die. And so it was just like I was desperate. You know, it was never a thing where I was like, I want to achieve something. It was exactly the opposite. So when people congratulate me, it's always really weird because I'm like, good job not dying, Tim. You know, like I didn't die. Woohoo.
Thank you.
Yeah, exactly. But no, it's always people that are relating. You know, it's a funny thing, man. And this was a long thread that I put together, and I don't want to make this about like me and my journey, but there's a lesson through the last couple of years which I've really, really learned and accepted. I spent a lot of time almost fighting these two sides of me, right? Because there was the Sober Nation Tim, and that was my start. There was Sober Nation and Stodzy, and it was like the whole side of me. It was like the sober Tim side. And it was probably about 6 or 7 years into my recovery where I was really like doing copy blogger. And I was like, you know what? I think I can do this. Like, I think I know enough about internet marketing to have like this business side of me, an entrepreneurial side of me. And I would try really hard to keep those two separate because I figured that people looking at Sober Tim don't give a shit about me trying to make money. And I figured people that are looking at entrepreneurial Tim like would judge me and like don't really care about that, you know. But eventually, um, I I just decided that I was gonna combine the two. We're not even combine the two. I was just this is just who I am. And like I can't be any other way. And I don't know how else to be other than like me, you know? And so they've really merged into I don't want to even gimmick it to call it a brand. They've just merged to be an overall message that I get to share with the world. And it's been a lot more fun since that's happened. Like it really has been a lot more fun.
It's really interesting that you bring this up. So let me make sure I understand you. You're basically saying that you've integrated like the different parts of your personality, your life into this one overarching thing rather than keeping them bucketed.
Yeah.
I think a lot about this on the writing side because why do I think a lot about it? There's a part of me that I guess, and maybe people listening to this will relate to this a little bit too. It's like when you're building a reputation as a writer, you almost want to control what that reputation is for. And so
Exactly.
you think about things of like, well, should I only write about XYZ topic? Should I use a pen name? Should my website be linked? You know, we all have 1,000 domains. Like, which of my websites should I use for this blog? All these things. And the older that I get, the more I realize that like I just wasted a lot of time thinking about that stuff. And really it's whatever catches your attention is the thing that you should be talking about. And this came up for me the other day. I was listening to Joe Rogan's interview with Jordan Peterson. Did you happen to catch that?
No, I listened to the first one years ago that got Jordan Peterson pretty famous. And no, he's just kind of gotten old for me, but no, I didn't listen to it.
I listened to it on the drive back and I enjoyed it a lot. I really like Jordan's understanding of like story archetypes.
That's
You
what I
can,
loved about him.
yeah.
Yeah, and I wish he just kept talking about that.
Well, to be fair, so this is actually something that they talked about. I'm not sure how much he does talk about that because we get a very biased view of him just interacting with him on the internet. And he said that too. He's like, if you were to look at me on the internet, you'd think I was the most embattled person in the world. But he's like, most of my days are great. Like I meet people in public. I've had like 3 negative experiences in public. That's about it. So we get a really slanted view of him. But one thing that they do talk about, and it seems from their conversation like that is still the main thrust of his research and his writing and stuff like that. But anyways, inside the conversation, they were talking. And one thing I've always admired about Joe Rogan is that he's built just this huge personal brand, this huge business. And it's pretty much just based on the few things that he enjoys the most. It's comedy,
MMA.
podcasts,
Yeah.
MMA, you
Yeah.
know? And I always admired his ability to just follow what he was interested in. And that kind of worked out for him. And Jordan, in the course of the conversation, was talking about, and I might get this slightly wrong, but it was like the archetype of the story of, well, the burning bush. And it was inside of a broader conversation. They were talking about the I don't know, with the essence, how do you describe God? What is God? And he was like, okay, well, if you look at these 5 different stories, quote unquote, God played a different role in each one of them, right? So God is the spirit that does this, is the spirit that does that. And then in one of them, he was talking about the burning bush. And he basically got to the point, he said, when Moses saw the burning bush, it was just a bush. You know, it wasn't like a huge tree that was on fire. It was a bush way off in the distance, caught his eye, and he went up and he paid closer attention to it. And as he did that, the voice of God like moved through him, right? And he says, like, that is symbolic of this thing, which is like, you should move towards the things that catch your attention because that is one of the manifestations of this thing that we call God. It's like,
Yeah.
if you,
See,
so
that is the
it's,
shit that's so cool that he talks about. Like, I wish he would just stay on that because it's so interesting. I didn't mean to interrupt you, by the way. Continue, please.
well, I found it fascinating too, because I was like, I mean, I don't consider myself to be very religious, but I love talking about the stories and the symbols that we use across time to explain certain ideas. And I had never heard of that way of thinking about that particular story, which is
Yeah.
like, yeah, this is why you follow your interests, you follow the things that pique your curiosity, because in those moments you are having an interaction with this, like the whatever we call like the divine or whatever it is. That is, I mean, I think what's his name, the War of Art would talk about that as like the muse.
Yeah, the
There's
muse.
different words for it all over the place,
Yeah.
but just that ability to focus or to follow and integrate the different parts of your life into your
Yeah.
work.
Yeah. That which calls you forward is your manifestation of a higher power. Totally. And that's a great, I know it's like we don't usually get that deep on this topic, but yeah, that is the journey that I've sort of been through. Like I've never enjoyed my work more, and I've never felt more with purpose than I do now. And it's great. So yeah, that come to say that's why I put that number one, don't drink alcohol, in the hook, because I just, because I can't escape it anymore. It's just who I am, and that's that.
Mm. Yeah, that's super interesting, man. I think there's something there too about anytime you have the experience of thinking or of seeing like a new successful product, brand, whatever, and you're like, oh, I thought of that years ago.
Yeah.
Usually that is a situation in which you ignored, or I gotta stop saying you. For me, I've had this experience a ton of times where I'll think something is cool, and then rather than going to inspect that burning bush, I'll be like, yeah, I'll get to that later. And
Yep.
then inevitably the idea moves on and finds somebody else. And then you're like, oh, I guess it was a good idea. Like it was a good idea. I should have taken time to do it. And that's fine. Like I think I've experienced it enough that I don't feel any sense of scarcity around it, because it's like there's always new ideas coming out.
Yeah.
But the lesson that I'm learning at this point in my career is like it's so important to just follow things that really pique your curiosity. And people ask about this too, man. Like I get people who will ask about the newsletter industry, and they'll say like, like what should I write about? Where is there opportunity still in the space? And I think people pretty generally accept that you're not going to out morning brew. But I would take that one step further and say, like, at this point, I don't think it's worth starting a newsletter at all, unless it's a topic that you're obsessed with,
Yeah.
because it's just too hard to compete. You're going to be competing with people who are obsessed with that thing. I think there's endless opportunity for people who do have obsessions. Like if you there's an infinite number of niches that you could write about and build a successful company in. But if you're not obsessed, if it's not part of your personality or some like weird hobby that you have on the side, don't even bother, because there's just too many other people out there that are going to take you to the cleaners.
Yeah. Agreed.
Okay, so the drinking one was one of the cool ones. There were a couple others that I thought would be kind of fun to just dig in on and hear more of your thoughts on. I think we've talked about martial arts a few times on this show, so maybe if you don't have anything else to add to that, we'll just keep going. Do you have anything?
Nothing to add other than what I've already said. It's just become such an integral part of my life, and I can't believe I didn't do it my whole life.
Okay. There are a couple others. I'm gonna blast through. Well, actually, let's pause for number 3 real quick. Live where you're the happiest.
Yeah.
So live where you're the happiest, not where your tax bill is small. That'll increase your earnings more than a tax break. Anything you care to add to that?
I just think worrying about taxes and expenses is such a huge waste of time in general. And I've gotten into like legitimate arguments about this, especially online, not with strangers. And there's been a few conversations in particular where I was just disagreeing with friends. And so it wasn't like me complaining with strangers on Twitter. It was just really differences of opinion. And I think the entire world, especially in America, where there's so much abundance, has the whole thing backwards, because there's only so much you can save, but there's no limit to as the amount that you can make. And people never invest in themselves. This really came to light when the gas prices were getting high, and everyone was losing their minds about the fact that gas, I mean, even in California, $7 a gallon, that's insane, right? That is completely insane. But if everybody operated with the mindset that this abundance isn't going to last forever, and while I have abundance, I should just invest in things that can produce more abundance, then gas prices really don't matter. Just like the price of coffee doesn't matter, just like the price of eggs doesn't matter, and just like taxes don't really matter that much. And I do stuff to save money on taxes. Like I buy real estate, I invest in other assets as much as I possibly can. I max out my IRA. I do all of the things. I don't really waste a whole lot of time playing games because it's just a waste of my life with the taxes, you know? But like the point is this whole entire conversation about like just the government and taxes, and you should be doing everything you can to save like 4% on your taxes. I never understood it. And I firmly, firmly believe that any mental energy that you spend trying to like stop something from happening is a huge waste of time and better off being spent trying to make something happen. And so that was really like my attempt to articulate this broader concept in a way that everybody can relate to, which is taxes.
I think that's well said. You said this before too about hiring, which is like, it's not about the way you think about running the business is like, it's not about what I don't want. It's like, what do I want to be spending my
Yes,
time on?
exactly. What do you want?
I think I agree with this too. And it's funny. I'm not sure I would have before I moved to Texas. I used to live in Connecticut where the taxes are a lot higher. And I think I would have, my perception would have been, what are you talking about? It's like I'm just as happy everywhere, so I might as well be somewhere else and save the money. But here's the thing: I'm in Texas. We've got no state income tax. I am happier here, but it's cultural. It has nothing to do with the taxes. I don't even think about the
Exactly.
taxes.
Yeah.
Plus, they get it out of you other ways. I mean, people know this in Texas. Like our sales tax is through the roof, and you can't drive around here without racking up an insane toll bill. But
Same thing with Nashville. I really thought Nashville was cool because their idea is the sales tax is super high, but everything else is low. So if you spend money, we're going to tax you. But you get got no matter what. And so
yeah,
it's just like, why am I spending my time on this?
there's no version of a government that's like, oh, we'll just not
Yeah.
collect as much as possible. Yeah. But I do agree. So live where you're the happiest. I think there's something big to that. I learned that lesson again driving through Encinitas. There was something very special about the way that town feels. Um, so yeah, I totally agree. I think that's the best way to make this decision. Now, let me ask you this. Let's try and make this a harder, because I think some people listening to this would say something like, well, that's easy for you to say. This is a thread about how your company's made 10 million bucks in the last 5 years. So you can live wherever you want. So fill in some of the color for me here. Make yourself more human. How do you deal with the difficult decisions that has there ever been a difficult decision that you've had to make related to where you guys live?
No.
All right, next one.
No. Like, I don't know. Come on. Easy for you to say. Like, I have been so malnourished and starving in my life. And even at that point in my life was still a higher quality than probably like 99.7% of all humans who have ever existed throughout the history of the world. And so it's just kind of like perspective really matters. It is easy for me to say now, and it's so funny you say that. I was just thinking about this morning. Um, Really randomly, I was just brushing my teeth and I turned around and my there's no door in between my bathroom and my bedroom. So I guess I'm brushing my teeth, I turn around and I can look all the way through my bedroom. I was like, wow, it's like really nice in here. And then it just brought me through all of the places. It brought me to North Philly, living in I'm not even gonna talk about that place. And then like to Northeast Philly, and then to the halfway house in Florida, and then to my first like apartment where I actually had a real job and I wasn't, like I was working for an honest paycheck. Let's just say that. And then moved in with a house to my buddies in Florida, where we all lived in a house together. And then I finally got my own place. And then my wife moved to Florida with me. And then we moved to Nashville, bought my first home, and now I'm living in Colorado in like about the same size home, a little bit bigger. But the point is, like, it's been steady, 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 steady progressions. And randomly, even just, it was just this morning when you say that, I was just brushing my teeth and I turned around, I looked through my bedroom, and Denver, how sunny it is here, so the sun was really coming through my window. I was like, damn, like life is pretty good right now. And it just went like of all of the places that I've lived over the last 15, 20 years. And so like no matter where you live or what your tax code is, you have the opportunity to make something of your life.
Mm, I like that. Yeah, I like that. It's also some good tough love for people who are like, oh, it's easy for
Yeah.
you to say. Sometimes you just got to
Yeah.
tell people like that.
Yeah.
No, it's not, but I'm still going to say it anyways. Like,
Yeah, exactly. Like actually it was not easy, but this is what I'm gonna say.
yeah. Okay, so there are a couple more in here. I think you get a nice note about choosing your partner wisely. That's smart. Walk when you're talking on the phone. That's smart. All right, so here's another one that I wanted to ask you about. Devote time and resources to quote unquote impossible goals. Don't invest everything in them, but invest some. You never know when a lottery ticket will hit. So talk me through this a little bit. What was on your mind when you wrote this?
You know, there's for whatever reason, my love-hate relationship with Vaynerchuk pops up on this show pretty often because of,
Vaynerchuk and Mighty Networks.
yes, exactly, exactly. Um, but the idea that Vaynerchuk has about buying the Jets one day, it just always really stuck with me because it was the love I have for Vaynerchuk is that in the very beginning, I found his daily V videos extremely inspiring. I would work out every day. I mean, I still work out every day, but it was just part of my routine. And I would hit the Stairmaster in the beginning, and I wouldn't run on that. I would purposely go on the treadmill instead of or excuse me, the Stairmaster instead of the treadmill because I could prop my phone up and I could watch the daily V video. And he had just one video where you're sitting around his conference table and he was like, I'm trying to buy the Jets. He's like, and he says, you have to be Billy's deep to do that. He's like, and you have to be Billy's deep liquid to do that. And there was just something about it that always stuck with me where it's like, yeah, and that's probably not going to happen, but somebody's got to buy the Jets, you know? And it just, there was just something about that weird phrase that always really stuck with me where I understood that whether he buys the Jets or not is actually kind of irrelevant. It's just the fact that he's reaching for something that is so, so far away that even if he doesn't get it, he'll still end up further along than he would have if he was just reaching for something that was like, at arm's length.
So that was what was on your mind, or is there a particular impossible goal that you set your sights on, or that was kind of
No,
in your mind when you were writing this?
yeah, my impossible goal has always been to have. Oh, I've never told anybody this, and it's very, very materialistic, which isn't something for me. But when I was a kid, I would watch movies, the typical movies we've all seen about like a couple walking through Times Square, or excuse me, not Times Square, Central Park, and it's always autumn, and they always got like the beautiful trench coat and like the leather gloves, and it's just like some businessman with a scarf. And when I was a kid, I always just remember thinking like that is so cool, and like I'll never be there, like I'll never ever get to see that. And little did I know that New York City was like a 3-hour bus ride from Philly. Like, it's just, like I've been to Central Park, but I remember seeing that and it just felt so, so out of place. Like that is not for me. That's for another group of people that I'll never belong to. And so my goal was always like to have a penthouse right outside of Central Park. So I could just be ridiculously like congratulate myself in like the most materialistic way possible. I always envisioned it with like a library on the wall and some big leather couch with like the silver beads on the stitching and the lining, and then put on my trench coat and my black leather gloves and my scarf and go for a walk in Central Park. So that's like my impossible my impossible dream. God, I can't believe I said that.
Love
It's
that.
so
Love
embarrassing.
that. Love that. That's some like, do you ever watch that show White Collar?
No, 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 no.
Oh, it's good. It's like it was a crime show. Basically, FBI agent gets paired up with like the best con artist in the world or whatever. The con artist, in order to get out of jail early, he has to work with the FBI to help them solve crimes. And he cons his way into just like amazing living conditions and these
Yeah.
beautiful apartments, even though he's on an FBI salary and stuff like that. I love that, man. That's cool. As you were talking through
Thanks.
that,
It
I was
feels
thinking to
embarrassing to
myself,
say it because like I just don't care about having a nice house or a nice apartment, but I always wanted to do it.
yeah, I get that. As you were talking through it, I was uh
But what about you? What's your like impossible dream?
that's what I was kind of wondering about because as yours was so well defined, I was thinking about it. And I'm like, oh, man, I don't know if I feel like I have this. Let me think about it for a second. Okay, um there is one thing, and I still feel like I haven't gotten to this place. So to me, this still drives me, but I will say I also don't think I've defined it well enough for to ever really get there. But here's what it is. So I used to take these super early morning walks. Um, yeah, I was in my early 20s or something, still living at home. I was working as a web developer, freelance, making no money. I think my first
Mhm.
year tax filing, I filed for like $13,000 or something like that. It was
Nice, bro.
ridiculous.
Nice.
Yeah, it was. But I'd wake up early and I would listen to Tony Robbins' Hour of Power, and I would take a
Oh
walk
yeah.
around the town that my parents lived in. And there was always this point where you walk down Main Street, past the library to where the town hall is, and then you kind of arch towards the river. And it's that river is the Connecticut River. It's probably, I think it's like the biggest river in the state. So you get all the way down to the bank, and it's just this huge sweeping landscape. And every time I would get there, man, I always felt to myself, I'm like, I wish that I could just do whatever I wanted today. Like, I wish that I could just stand here all day if I wanted to, or go to work, or get on a plane and go to Europe. Like, I wish I had that flexibility. Because I couldn't. I had no money. I had no savings. I had no reputation. I had nothing. I basically had whatever small contract I was working on, and that was it. And I just remember that feeling of being like, man, one day I want to be able to take this walk, stand here, and then if I decide that I want to go to Spain and learn guitar for 3 months, like I'm just going to do that, you know, like total
Can't you do that though?
freedom. Now I can. Yeah.
Yeah, but you
This
can.
was 10 years. Yeah. Well, so yes and no. I feel like I'm closer now to that than ever before. Financially, it wouldn't be a problem. My job is flexible enough that I could live anywhere and work it. I'm incredibly lucky to be where I am. And I mean, it's just a good reminder too that like, hey, you actually have been moving kind of towards this thing. But in my mind, that goal, what it really requires is enough passive income to continue paying my bills without me working, and like the flexibility to walk away from any work that I am doing. And so I don't know how realistic that is. I think it's realistic. I think it's still something that's good to shoot for, but I also haven't redefined it in a long time. It's just a feeling that I have. Like I have that feeling of like, man,
Yeah.
if I just want to go to the library and read books all day, I just want to do that, or
Mhm.
disappear and take a trip. I used to really love long distance running, and I was like, it'd be so cool to just run from here to the ocean and like just spend a couple of days, just nothing but your hydration pack and your wallet. Just take a run, stop at a hotel, get a room, get a dinner, fuel up, rest up, hit the road again the next day. I never had the flexibility to do that. So that was always kind of my like crazy goal.
Hmm.
But you bring up a good point, which is like, and frankly, we could reverse this on yours too. And maybe this would be instructive for the people looking or listening. It's like, what does it actually take to do that? Because I have a lot of the flexibility that's built into my goal. And yours, I mean, a penthouse, it would be expensive to own, but to
Yeah, they're
rent
like
it,
20 million bucks, dude.
you got to be like Billy's deep to do that. No, but it's like
Yeah.
you could rent them for a month. I'm sure that's like feasible. I have no idea, but the point is like I always felt like Tim Ferriss did a really good job of being like, you have this vague idea of what you want, but you're purposefully not clarifying it, and you're always going to be miserable if you don't really clarify it. And then just look at what your options are. As soon as you
Yeah.
clarify it and look at the options, you can either say, you know what? Like, we're spending December this year in New York City. Or, you know
Yes.
what? This actually isn't like, this doesn't drive me anymore. And I've had those goals too. Like I've had to say no to things and I'm like, you know what? This just doesn't move me anymore.
That might happen. Yeah, that definitely might happen. Where it just doesn't move me anymore. But exactly what you said is the point. If I want to just go hang out in my penthouse in Manhattan and just go walk the streets and drink some coffee and walk around Central Park with my trench coat and my gloves, like I just want to go do it
Yeah.
and not have to Airbnb a spot and just be like, this is my house and I can come and go as I want. Um,
No.
and yeah, like it hasn't actually worn off. I kind of expected it would, um, as I've lived in other places and I've lived in a bunch of places, and just my priorities have changed, but it hasn't worn off. I don't know. Those houses are, yeah, I mean, it's probably 20 to 40 million bucks. And then the HOAs on them is like 10 grand a month, something crazy. Like you're really, really balling out if you own a lower Manhattan penthouse that is walkable to Central Park. But I'm going for it. If Gary Vee can try to buy the Jets, if Gary Vee wants to be Billy's deep, I could be like a couple hundred mil deep and get my penthouse. I feel like I can do it.
There
Yeah.
you go. I would love to hear, I mean, I would love to hear what some of the listeners think about this, like when they think about what that impossible goal is. And I actually have one more follow-up question for this. And maybe we'll do one more. Were there any other impossible goals along the way that you feel like you did check off? Or do you think that the nature of an impossible goal is almost to remain undone? And it's just like the thing that drives you?
Yeah, a little bit of both. Yes, actually. But buying Copyblogger was a ridiculously like outside of the realm of reality type thing for me. Like I don't want to overdo it because I remember even having a couple conversations with Brian Clark, a lot of people call him Clark, and realizing that whole hero worship thing where you meet your heroes and you realize he's just a person, just like anybody else. And so in a way, the elevation of what it was has depleted a little bit for me. And it's not to say that I take any credit away from myself. When you get to new levels, you realize that people at that level are just like, there's no difference. Everyone's just people. And so that has kind of happened. However, I am continuously reminded all the time at how much of an impact that website and just that knowledge had on me. And it's very, very, very humbling. Here's why it's humbling. And here's really the point I'm getting to. Because when I do my webinars and my master classes, and I'm doing a month-long workshop on sales pages, writing sales letters. When I do that and people ask me questions, I get put right back in that spot where I am a beginner and I'm thinking, how does this guy know so much stuff? Like, how do I get there? How do I do this? And now that I'm on the other side of it, I do not take that lightly at all. And so to answer your question, there is value to the impossible thing remaining impossible, because as soon as you get it, you stop trying, right? It's just kind of human nature. Like once you're not hungry anymore, you kind of stop hunting, and that just happens. But there also is deep, deep, deep satisfaction I have anytime I think about the fact that, like, oh my God, I cannot believe that I pulled that off. And it's not an ego thing. I mean, maybe it's an ego thing. If it is, I'm not like ashamed of it, but it really is like a deep, deep sense of like satisfaction and gratitude.
Hmm. I think that's a nice segue into the last one here that I really wanted to kind of get more of your thoughts on, which is 15. Don't talk to anyone like they're above you, even if they're further along than you. They'll respect your self-respect. I think you touched on this a little bit in terms of like meeting people that you looked up to and stuff like that. You've always done a good job of this. Who taught you that in your life?
My dad. Yeah, my dad. My dad is a tough, like my whole family are tough, tough, tough people. And they're not tough as in like fighting tough. Although in the case of my dad, that is true. He was like a Pennsylvania Select wrestler. He was a really, really good wrestler. And so, you know, I've seen my dad get into some wild, wild shit. But my dad was just never like intimidated by people. And I was always intimidated by people. It's just my first reaction. And even I remember it playing lacrosse because I was a pretty decent lacrosse player and I was so much bigger than everybody. But I would still like run up to checks and kind of like stutter my feet. And eventually my dad was like, Tim, like you're 40 pounds bigger than this guy. Like just keep running, just run through him. Like I don't think you understand. Just keep running, you know? And my dad really, really taught me that about it not being a matter of being better than anybody. It's just a matter of everybody can look anybody else in the eye. And regardless of where you are in this like metaphorical totem pole of society, that thing really only exists in our own minds. And it took me like a lot of time, not just to learn that lesson, but actually be like not scared shitless, meeting new people and shaking new hands and just being like, hey, I'm Tim. Like, what's your name? You know, like I'm a person, you're a person, we're right on the same level. What do you got? This is what I got. Hi. You know, it took me a long time to, like I said, not just learn that, but feel it when I enter a new situation. So I'm glad that you brought that one because that was kind of like the most subtle one that I didn't think anybody would pay attention to, but actually that was the one that meant the most to me.
Hmm. Yeah, that's really interesting, man. It's really interesting, and I feel like it might be a good place to wrap this up. But this was a great thread. So thanks for putting it together. I certainly enjoyed just kind of the look behind the scenes of some of the different ways, like some of the different things that are top of mind for you. Maybe we'll try a call to action, which is like, hey, if you're listening to this, go to the thread and add anything that you would add that's like been an unconventional tip that has helped you in your journey. Because I love thinking through these types of things, the non-obvious of like, oh, this is what really made the difference for me.
That'd be cool. I also want to hear people's like impossible dreams. That's such a fun idea to talk about because everybody's got something, you know. I would love to hear about that, about what people think about when they stare up at the stars at night. And I just think that would be so cool. Yeah. So hopefully I get a couple DMs from our listeners saying like, this is my impossible dream. If you have one and you're not too embarrassed to share, like apparently I'm not, even though I feel mortified, please send it to me, send it to Ethan. I'd love to hear it.
Yeah. And in the meantime, you can also check out copybloggerpod.com, sign up for the email list, and please DM me, which we still got to do an episode on, man. We'll do it soon.
Yeah, well,
we've got stuff.
We've got stuff. Yeah. I don't know if anybody noticed about 2 weeks ago, there was like a big blackout. Remember, it was like Twitter down and none of the DMs on Twitter were working. Well, perfect timing that something happened there that wasn't just some kind of bug. There's some weird code change. So the autoresponder in Please DM Me is acting a little bit glitchy, but it's actually going to be like a big opportunity because we can make it better. And so, but still buy it.
I feel like we got to work on your radio pitches. Last week was like, yeah, it's gonna be great. There's like one bug we still got to work out, but you should go buy it now.
Yeah, just go buy it. Like... just go buy it. plzdm.me. Go buy it.
All right, people. We'll see you next week.
Thanks, everyone. See ya.